Hello, welcome everybody to the second day of the Winter Days. Good morning to all of you. Good afternoon to our partners from Asia. We're very happy to welcome you here to the second day. We have very exciting sessions today, very interesting sessions like yesterday. First of all, I would like to welcome my colleague Arian on stage.
Thank you, Sonia. Good morning, Sonia. Good morning, everyone. It's exciting to be with you for the second day of our event. And I would like to start with a short story. And the story is about a university professor who's going to visit a Zen master. So he's going there to ask him a couple of questions about Zen. And when he's there, the Zen master brings tea and starts pouring tea. And university professor starts talking and he keeps talking and talking about what he thinks he knows about Zen. So the Zen master will keep pouring and pouring the tea into the cup until the cup is full, and then there is tea on the table. And the professor, well, he gets a bit confused. He asks, "Hey, what are you doing? Can't you see the cup is full?" Zen master says, your mind is like this cup. It's already full of ideas, and you have to let go of some of them so you can learn new things. And I tend to tell this story to myself every once in a while because we live in a world that every day is filled with emerging technologies and concepts. And sometimes we have to keep an open heart and mind and let go of some of our old beliefs and ideas to be able to absorb new ideas. And that's what's happening to me every once in a while, especially considering the emerging technologies regarding data spaces. So I wanted to start with this short story, and I would like to welcome you all to the second day of our event. And yesterday, indeed, was a very exciting time for me, especially. And although none of our presenters aligned together previously, so they managed to organize a very well organized event, so to say. So and I really enjoyed the time management, the moderation. It was perfect. And hopefully today we're going to have the same exciting and perfectly well organized event. So back to Sonia. And yeah, thank you. I can see you're already at the office. And some people may know today is a bit stormy in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. So that's the reason I still present from home. But Sonia is already at the office.
I'm at
So
the
please,
IDSA
Sonia.
studio.
Yeah.
Thank you, Arian. Thank you for the story. And definitely, I think we saw yesterday a lot of really interesting presentations from different partners, different topics. And yes, I think we will have to make a little bit of room to learn those new things. And it was great yesterday to see that companies from different backgrounds with different interests, different expertise, they all work together for the same goal. And I think that's the most positive thing about all of this, is that we are collaborating together to reach the same goal. Even if it's from the component development side, from the rulebook side, open source, etc., etc. So this is really encouraging. And this is also what we are going to see today. Yesterday it was mentioned, we were talking about ideas. It was mentioned that we had to transition from this abstract world to really tangible assets. And yesterday we saw the steps to create a data space. And today is going to be very exciting because we are going to see the things that are already out there. So these tangible assets, these real use cases. So I'm really, really looking forward to today's sessions.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we're gonna more people join. With this first session will start at 9:30. So let me give you an overview of what we're going to see today. So the first session we're going to see today is how to connect data spaces, and it's especially these use cases that are already there. So our colleagues from NTT, Deutsche Telekom, and TNO are going to talk about their current activities and to see how they are implementing all those things that were shown yesterday and were described yesterday. The second session is going to be on the certification. So we've mentioned several times certification is one of the core or the main pillars of the IDSA. And we have a way to make this happen. So we have a way to bring trust to the data ecosystem for our certification. So today we're going to see what the certification is all about. And the last session of the morning is also based on one of our main pillars, which is interoperability. So now we have an asset that will help us test this interoperability. And we're going to have a session, a really practical session, a demonstration on this new asset, which is the IDS Reference Testbed. So as you see, this morning is going to be full of very interesting sessions. Let me remind you as well, before the session starts, we have, you can also use the networking areas to talk to other attendees. So you can use the time until 9:30 for that. And we also have the expo area where you can see our implementation partners and evaluation facilities. So you can make use of those two areas before the session starts. I see more and more people are joining.
Yes, that's really exciting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, here you have the agenda also for the afternoon. So after 1 p.m., we will have the sessions of the afternoon, and we will see how the IDS communities are starting. So we will have several examples from different domains, also very interesting. And of course, one of the questions that everyone has, so how to run a data space, how is that done? So we will see that today. Also very important, how, and do our hubs, so really important partners, our hubs, how do they contribute to the IDSA? How do they contribute to implementing all the things that we described today? This is something we're going to see and to learn today. Okay, very good. People keep joining. No, I don't know. Ariane, would you like to maybe comment?
Yeah, definitely. Yesterday, well, I don't know, for people who don't know me, I'm a solution architect, and being a developer myself, especially yesterday, I liked two sessions, not in regard to the quality, because the quality was pretty high for all the presentations, but two last sessions, open source topics, and also component development, they were especially very interesting for me as a developer. And today we will have a testbed installation, a hands-on installation of the testbed. And of course, I wouldn't jump ahead of the time to explain what the testbed is. I will keep that for the session itself. But maybe for my developer friends, that session would be especially very interesting. So I would encourage everyone to join us at the developers, especially at 11:30, to see the hands-on installation of the testbed. And Sonia will moderate today's sessions. So Sonia is also a part of the tech team at the IDSA, and she's managing some of our exciting projects here. So, the first session before the testbed would be about certification, which also would have some insights about the testbed itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and thank you, Ariane. Let me say, last year it was, with regards to these two sessions, certification and the testbed, last year it was a lot of work in the background. So a lot of defining and testing and implementing. And yeah, we're really, really happy and really proud that this is now something real, something tangible. And we are very, very happy to present this to you.
Exactly. It is very exciting, and the beauty of it is the collaborative effort. The testbed or the components, they may have some, they may need some improvements, some of them, but the beauty is you see this whole team working together to making it happen, and we have to keep that in mind. These teams are not directly located in one place or even in one organization. So we managed to make it work, although it's an open source project and we have different contributors. The beauty is we can make it work like this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And of course, as you mentioned, this has been a joint endeavor with several of our partners, and the rest of our partners can always contribute to it. So this is the way that we define the things, and this is the way that we deliver them, and we make them grow and we make them better all together.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's a collaborative effort. among many different partners.
Definitely, definitely. So it was all from my side, Sonia. Of course, I will be with our great participants at 11:30 again. But before that, if you have anything to add, please. Otherwise, we can maybe give the audience a couple of minutes before the main session starts.
Exactly. Let's do that. We have 5 minutes left before the first session start. So let's have a quick break, maybe grab a cup of coffee, maybe visit the networking area or the expo area, and let's meet back here in 5 minutes at 9:30.
Exactly. And please, if you have questions regarding yesterday's sessions or today's sessions, please use the chat area, mention the ideas, mention the feedback. Feedbacks especially are very welcome about any part. And we're looking forward to questions, and we're looking forward to our great presenters. So wish you a great day, and we'll see you soon.
See you at 9:30. Okay. Hello again. Welcome to all of you that have been joining recently. So it's time to start with the first session. So for that, I would like to welcome on stage my colleague, Marcos Matsas.
Hello. Hi, Sonia. Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here today for the moderation of the first session. And thank you, Sonia, for that. Great. So yesterday, the day started with a vision session. We heard about how data spaces and the initiatives that want to make it happen are united to make interoperable data spaces happen, data spaces that can talk with each other, either using the same language or a translator that can be used as common denominator, a framework under which we can all have data spaces that are not silos, but can be interconnected. And today we're gonna talk with the pioneers, the visionaries that have taken this concept and already doing progress with it. We're gonna hear, and I'm really happy about this from the world. We're gonna hear from Japan, with NTT and Koki Mitani being here with us. Good afternoon to you, Koki. And we're going to hear, of course, from Europe and the efforts that are being done there. Herman Pals is with us from TNO. Good morning. To know that. And Dandan Wang, I guess, from
Morning.
Germany, right? Good morning to you as well. It's great to have you here. I'm really happy about this session. So I think we can already start. Herman, I think the floor is yours. And
okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for the kind introduction and giving the opportunity to elaborate what TNO is doing in the area of interconnecting data spaces. My name is Herman Pals. I'm commercial responsible for the whole data sharing and AI portfolio within TNO. I will give more the framework of interconnecting data spaces, and I'm quite glad that you also invited Koki, because we have a quite close collaboration in a project, and he will elaborate on, say, concrete topics we are doing currently in interconnecting Japan and the Netherlands. I will start sharing my slides. I assume those slides will be made available later. And can you see my slides?
Yes, they came on screen.
Yeah. Just a quick introduction. TNO is a large research and development institute in the Netherlands, comparable and a small version of the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, working in many different areas. I'm from the ICT department, where more than 300 people are currently working, and we are closely collaborating with our colleagues in the various sectors, because data spaces, of course, pop up everywhere. So we are working together with our colleagues in the health, logistics, industrial data spaces to enable data sharing in different sectors. The ambition from TNO is to overcome the current problems with and the barriers with data sharing. And we are quite pragmatic. We are not only producing PowerPoints, but we love to do proof of concepts and supporting pilots. We have no operational ambitions, but we really want to enable to scale up the solutions. So in that way, we are also quite happy to collaborate with NTT, which of course is a confident partner to deliver, say, reliable data space solutions. And from ICT, we also see the role to avoid, say, sectoral silos to enable interoperability across countries. So having the manufacturing data space in the Netherlands connected to the manufacturing data space in Japan or Germany, but also cross-sectoral, which will be the next wave, for instance, combining manufacturing with the logistics data space. And in our portfolio, we have key elements. Sovereignty is one of our key design principles, also fully supported by the European Commission as well by the IDSA. It's all about data sharing, is all about trust, but in the end, data sharing is only a means, because in the end, it's about, say, delivering value for all the stakeholders, both on governmental parties as commercial parties. And we have areas, so the sovereign data space is about getting the basics right. Self-sovereign identity has to do with access and control and management. So we see more and more that also SSI principles are used to ensure that the right people have access to the right data and also can revocation. So if they don't have the access rights anymore, then you can stop sharing the data. And on top of that, we have some specific areas, because with data share, you want to generate value. How to deal, for instance, with sensitive data. So not revealing the data itself, but making information out of it by technologies like multi-party computation, synthetic data, federated learning. Digital twinning, of course, is a hot topic. And from our governmental role, in the end, trust in AI is, of course, also very important. Avoiding all kinds of nasty paper headlines as a company saying you misused AI. How can you do it in a fair way? And we are also, say, from the first day we were involved in the IDSA. Our director is board member of the IDSA. We produced and contributed to many of the deliverables of the IDSA. And we also built various IDSA-based ecosystems, and I want to highlight in this slide smart connected supplier networks. It was also mentioned yesterday for various times. It's fully compliant with IDSA, and it's fully operational, because more than 300 customers are currently using SCSN as a way of sharing data. And I think also one of the key message for today is that what I always call data spaces 1.0 is already operational. You can do it today. So it's not only, say, proof of concept paperware. You can build operational data spaces today. And of course, as TNO, we are now looking, say, what's the way ahead, because the next wave is, of course, connecting all those dots. And that's also, say, a key part in the European Commission. They also very stimulating the realization of data spaces, and interoperability is one of the key requirements. It's mentioned on various places. And I think what's also, because also in the Netherlands, we have huge discussions about this interoperability. And I think for those who act on the governmental part, it would be really appreciated if, or effective, if for all governmental funded projects, there is a key requirement that they have to show interoperability. So that it's, because it's public funded money, I think it would be really great if for all projects supporting data spaces, which is really great, that there is also kind of requirements included that you can receive this money, but you have to show that you are interoperable, and also to avoid future silos. Then the interoperability of the data spaces, what is mentioned, say, federation of data spaces is a key requirement just to bring up the ecosystem. And there are 4 interoperability levels defined, because sometimes people think it's only about technical interoperability, but it's a real requirement. Say, semantic interoperability is a key requirement. It's just understanding each other. Just to say it very say, if we have a Dutch ecosystem and a German ecosystem, at least we have to understand each other's languages. But also on the technical level, for instance, green is becoming more and more important, but everybody has his own interpretation of green. So if you have to align on the technical area, you have to align the semantics. The next wave is on organizational level. I will come to back that later. And the last one is on the legal perspective. I always deliver the example. Suppose that data is becoming public or is lost. So you have some problems. Where do we meet in court? Or what are the rules? Say, and who is responsible and who is accountable of what's going wrong? And I think that's also strongly needed in this area for interoperability. For instance, if we're working together with Japan, normally, of course, on the technical, we do everything we can, but also say sometimes something is going wrong. And if a Japanese company complains that something in the Netherlands is going wrong, who will be responsible? Will it be NTT? Will it be the service provider? Will it be the end company? Whoever, you need to have clear guidance on that. And just to show that interoperability is a key issue, because data sharing is not starting today. Also in the past, there are already, during the last 10 years, many data sharing ecosystems built up. This is just a snapshot in the Netherlands, both in the sectoral approaches as well as more generic. And at this stage, they are mostly silo based, but it's just indicating that there are already living ecosystems who have a way of data sharing. And I think the key challenge is bringing all those pieces together. And I think also in other countries, there will be a similar picture, because it's not, say, starting from today that people are going to share data. What's needed, say, in building a data space? I think 3 key elements is, of course, say, the technical components, the data platforms. The second one is the data marketplaces, and the second is building blocks to govern the data sovereignty. For today, I don't want to go into detail, but I included in my presentation many references to public documents. So there are already many definitions, descriptions of all those different pieces. And I really say, let's at least try to have the same language and to use the same principles as much as possible. And I think also on the IDSA website, there are many nice white papers and description how to set up a data space. And I really recommend, if you are interested in this area, please use this material as much as possible. For the interoperability, there are basically for the federation of different data spaces, and this is published, say, in the data sharing canvas, which was developed in the data sharing coalition in the Netherlands. We developed one of the principles. You can have full federation, so the complete understanding of the data spaces and different roles, but a different model, because sometimes that's simply not realistic. And of course, for instance, if this is logistics and this is manufacturing, then there will be specific requirements for each data space, but you can also use a proxy model to ensure interoperability at a certain level and do the required translations to ensure interoperability between those different data spaces. And there you need a harmonization for interoperability. That's a key requirement. And I think that's becoming of growing importance. Just as an example, I worked 25 years in the telecom industry. And I think the telecom industry was quite successful in bringing all the different kinds of networks together I think it's the largest network worldwide with 7 billion endpoints connected at this stage. And it started, say, in the early 90s, where, say, for instance, the analog and also the first GSM, there was no interoperability, for instance, between Europe and America. But due to the strong standardization effort and a strong governance, in the end, we now have a worldwide working systems with the 4th generation and the 5th generation, which is fully interoperable. But that's due that there is a clear process and a strong governance and harmonization and an incentive to bring all those pieces together. And I think we are now of the 90s of the telco industry, bringing all those pieces together. But I would really recommend, say, also to think about this governance and having a strict process, because bringing up a data space is not that difficult. But for instance, migration schemes, bringing up, say, from data spaces 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, having backwards compatibility, that's a kind of nasty job. And there you really need, say, a strong governance to ensure that the ecosystem is working. Similar also for the internet. You can say it's a free way, but I definitely sure, like IETF, there are strong governance bodies who ensure that the internet can move forward to the next generation. And I think also in data spaces, that's really, say, a future key requirement. I already mentioned, say, the different levels, because I'm also looking at the clock. And we made in the Dutch AI Coalition also a framework for the different elements. When will it be available? Because to be realistic, especially around interoperability, we are, say, on a common roadmap. It's not yet there. We need 1 or 2 years before you have the full interoperability on the different levels. So we are working, and that's what I mean, say, we are working on data spaces 2.1 and 3.1. So bringing to the last slide, data spaces 1.0 is operational. I think that's one. So you can do it today, and you can make business out of it today. The second recommendation, especially, say, for the governmental, please include a recommendation or even a requirement to show interoperability if you're building data spaces, just to ensure future interoperability. Interoperability is not only needed at technical, but also semantic, organizational, and legal level. And what's very important is an overarching interoperability governance framework to ensure future interoperability. Many of those things are elaborated in nice documents. If you want, I can drop the links also in the chat for future reading, and my presentations will be made available. Thanks a lot.
Well, we thank you very much, Herman. This was very inspiring, very interesting. A lot of nice, interesting things that we saw there about the governance of data spaces for interoperability and so on. It's good that we have saved 15 minutes of time at the end of the session for questions that the audience might have. I want to remind everyone that you can write on the chat questions that can be answered later. And of course, Herman, you are also invited to share any links that you think would be interesting for the audience. Now, for the next presentation, I will invite Koki Mitani from NTT Corporation, a member of IDSA. Good afternoon, Koki. Thank you very much for joining from Japan. It's an honor for us to have someone to show the global character of IDSA. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Koki Mitani from NTT Corporation. So I'm senior research engineer of NTT, and I'm working on research and development of data sharing infrastructure. So I'd like to share my screen.
And we can see them.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
So thank you very much for providing this opportunity for us. Today, I'd like to talk about international cross-industry data sharing for realizing carbon neutral resource recycling and sustainable development. We think that data spaces need to be interconnected globally. In Europe, there are several initiatives to develop a new data space, such as mobility data space, Catena-X, and smart connected supplier network. And also in Japan, we have some initiatives to develop data sharing network in each industry. And in Japan and Europe, there are one more larger initiative for connecting these different industries, such as Gaia-X and Data-EX. We think that the Japanese and European and other countries' data spaces need to be interconnected based on international rules and standards for connecting the global value chain. And from this slide, I'd like to talk about the background of our activity. There are several challenges presented by data sharing between businesses. For example, the company's data cannot be shared with other companies because of risk that important data and business secrets could be exposed. The second one is it is impossible to check who will use the company's data and how they will use it when sharing data with other companies. And third one is it is impossible to check if data provided by other companies is accurate and generated by legitimate means, or whether it benefits one's own company. Fourth one is there are many data platforms, but ID systems and data are siloed for each industry, each purpose, and each company. To overcome these challenges, we have published white papers on global data infrastructure for data sharing between businesses. In this white paper, we think that the mechanism for guaranteeing security and trust is important. And for data sharing between businesses, it is important to have security functions that protect against cyber attacks. And also, it is important to have functions that protect the data sovereignty of data providers in accordance with laws and regulations. And in that white paper, we have proposed technologies for promoting data sharing between companies. NTT is working on research and development of a technology which can be used for management of data sharing conditions. And this technology enables the sharing of data to business users while maintaining the data sovereignty of the data provider. This technology manages the agreement of data sharing between data provider and data user, and it can provide the workflow for application and approval of data sharing, and it can apply data sharing conditions directly into the data flow, and also it can provide data sharing history. Some of this concept is already implemented by NTT Communications, one of the operating company of NTT. And they have implemented a software platform with trust into their smart data platform. This software is based on the concept linking data to data owners, and it includes features such as access control, usage control, data history, and data isolation. And last October, we have launched an international cross-industry data sharing testbed. And we are now connecting Japan and Europe by this testbed, and we would like to invite Japanese companies and European companies into this testbed, and we would like them to try data sharing between Japan and Europe by using this testbed, and we would like them to use this testbed for their business between Japan and Europe. And we would like to verify the practicality and operability of a mechanism that can properly control the rights to use each data based on laws and contracts. And we would like to build Japanese data spaces and connect them to European data spaces. And we would like to use that testbed for trying to make this, realizing this. In this slide, in the top of this slide, there are some initiatives in Europe, such as Catena-X, Mobility Data Space, Smart Connected Supplier Network, and so on. And on the bottom of this slide, there are several initiatives in Japan. And we would like to connect these different data spaces. And we think that we need some kind of international gateway and also operating platform for data spaces. And for considering about interconnection of data spaces, we think that we need to consider about 4 aspects for a complete inter-data space connectivity, as Herman-san said in the previous presentation. So we need to consider about these 4 aspects: technical interoperability, semantical interoperability, organizational interoperability, and legal interoperability. At the moment, we have started discussing about first one and second one, technical and semantical interoperability. And also we are planning to discuss about organizational and legal interoperability. And we have started discussion with TNO. And for discussing about technical and semantical interoperability, we need to think about 2 different types of interoperability, interconnection. The first one is interconnection of IDS compliant data spaces. At first, we are now planning to confirm the feasibility of interconnection of multiple IDS compliant data spaces. We are now starting to develop a Japanese data space, and we are now trying to connect this Japanese data space to Dutch data space, Smart Connected Supplier Network. And the second one is interconnection of non-IDS and IDS compliant data spaces. We have started discussion about how we can connect different types of data spaces. Last November, we have started an international trials for connecting global supply chains. We have deployed our international testbed, and we have connected this to Smart Connected Supplier Network in Netherlands. And TNO and Fraunhofer is supporting this activity. And we have also invited Japanese manufacturing companies into this international trial. And at the moment, we have connected Japanese factory and Dutch factory by using this network. This slide shows the implementation of international cross-industry data sharing testbed. On the top of this slide, it is a list of our partners. From left to right, Japanese University and Japanese Manufacturing Company, Switzerland Innovation Park, Fraunhofer in Germany, and Smart Connected Supplier Network in Netherlands, and Dutch Manufacturing Company. And from this March, we are planning to discuss about connecting to Catena-X in Germany. On the bottom of this slide, we have deployed our testbed infrastructure in Japan and Europe. We have deployed our smart data platform into this testbed, and also we have deployed IDS connectors and OPC UA client for connecting factories. Today, I'd like to show demonstration about sharing CO2 emission data between Japan and the Netherlands. So I'd like to explain this picture. Please look at the bottom left of this picture. There is Omron, Japan. We have connected the factory of Omron, Japan, and we have connected their controller and their dashboard and their factory. Reflow oven is in their factory. On the bottom right of this picture, we have connected Omron, Netherlands into this testbed. On the top of this picture, we have deployed our testbed in Japan and Europe. We have deployed OPC UA client, smart data platform with trust, and IDS connectors into this testbed. In Japan side, we have deployed IDS connector for Omron Japan. In the Netherlands side, we have deployed IDS connector for Omron Netherlands. And those IDS connectors are connected to the infrastructure provided by Smart SCSN, Smart Connected Supplier Network, and they have provided identity provider, dApps, and broker. So I'd like to show demonstration, and I'd like to switch my screen for the demonstration. Please wait a moment. So I'm starting this movie. So we have connected the factory in Netherlands and Japan. And this is both of this is Omron's factory. And their factories are monitoring their own CO2 emission data each other for comparing these two factories. And we have collected the data about fuel consumption and power consumption. And this graph shows the amount of CO2 emissions. And we are using the Omron's controller for this demonstration. So Omron's controller provides connectivity to the factory, and that controller has capability for exchanging data by using OPC UA. So we are using OPC UA for connecting our testbed to their factory. And we have deployed IDS connectors for each of their factory. So I'd like to switch my screen to the presentation. So this is the last slide. So we need a collaboration for discussing about how we can connect different data spaces and how we can use this interconnection for connecting global supply chain. And diverse challenges must be overcome to solve social problems and to realize sustainable development and circular economy. And no single country or company can overcome them all. We aim to collaborate and grow with companies, communities, and governments around the world who are working to resolve similar issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Koki. It was again very interesting from your side. It was really exciting for me to see this demonstration and see all these different flags from the countries to show the vision of IDS to interconnect data spaces wherever they are actually being saved in something like that we hope to see much more in the near future. So for any questions, we have, as said, some time left at the end. And now I would go to Dandan from Deutsche Telekom. So Dandan, please say also with that, what's the vision of Deutsche Telekom on this, and how do you also see the interconnection of data spaces? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco, for this introduction. Sure, and I will share my screen now. Just 1 second. Okay, good.
And we can see your slides. Very nice.
Super. Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, and also thank you everyone for attending this session. My name is Dandan. I'm now working in Deutsche Telekom for 3 years. I think since 2018, I left Paris and I come to Bonn, so in Germany, and this is a headquarter of Deutsche Telekom. I've been working for our product, the Data Intelligence Hub. Today, I will also introduce a bit on that, and also bring our product to the market. So by training, I'm a senior data scientist, and I focusing a lot to design the solution for the customers. And this is why in this session, a bit different from Herman and Koki, I bring a more like my working experience, how we see the customer when they having the problems using our product, and they are also observing there are so many data space out there and how they are doing that. I think that could be some interesting practice to discuss. And that's why I'm very happy if there's any question, any discussion. And yeah, please feel free. Then let me just go to the next slides. And I have a quick outline on the agenda. Yeah. The first one is we have some discussion on the current situation. I think different from 2 years back. Our product, 3 years back on the market, there's not much. We even don't talk about it as a data space. But nowadays, I think almost a different industry all talking about there's a data space. What shall we do on that? And then strategy for the company need to be impact and what is consequence, how to join. And those kind of discussion, we are thinking, the market has changed. And this is some observation, and we call it mesh data space. And of course, there are so many also questions around it. And this is why I do also focus some part of it. I can also have one slide on that. And afterwards, I have 2 scenarios that's specific what we do in these 2 selected scenarios to serve our customer. So the first one, I think this is a very background page. And I guess in this 2-day session, most of the audience should be already familiar on all these different terms there. I think in 2021, as I also put it there, this quote, German Federation government, there's a data strategy, and they have a very nice definition about data space. It is basically the value behind it. It is there's a 2 parties or 2 companies or 2 machines. They don't need to build a trust by themselves, or they don't know each other. But nowadays, based on the data space, they can build up this trust over the data transaction. This is a very different mindset here. And of course, this cannot be just from one day to another it become true. This is also the reason technology paves a very important way to this transformation. And we also see IDS did fundamental job through this couple years to build up the building block for this technology. And I also believe this is a very important data sovereignty technology for building up the data space and also run the data space and also to further strive the data space. And this is why I use the one list, as you see here on the top of the slides. I think that's a very good list of the existing data sharing initiatives. I think there is some of them is focusing on more or less certain industry or sectors. There are also some of very generic data initiatives. They are also providing, for example, GaiaX, and we also learned a lot yesterday, Firewire and iShare. They did also a lot of tremendous work to bring the principle, the guidance, and also the practice to use in the data space and also supporting to build up the new data space. And I also put one paper here. This is from the OpenDEI. So they have also a report. It called Aligning the Reference Architectures, Open Platforms, and also Large-Scale Pilot in Digitization European Industry. So in this paper, I think the main point I attract my attention would be they are asking for a common principles. Because based on this existing different initiatives, there's a need to have a common understanding on the different principles, on the standards, and also maybe functionalities, how this can be served of a common understanding for the existing and the new data spaces. And this also leads me to see, I think I also put one quote there from the European data strategy, and Mr. Hillman also mentioned that part. It is also important as they also want to pursue the direction is we want to drive the data spaces and definitely want to also further strengthen to connecting them and also basically putting the focus on unlocking the data value within the data space and crossing the data space. I think this is why today, this session, at least I think is very important and a very interesting topic for us to discuss here. I'm quite happy. I see both the two speakers, Herman and Koki, both will talk about the 4 interoperable levels. And I was also thinking about this. So as you see, we didn't discuss it before, but this is very nice coincidence. We all think about this direction, and we think that's very important part. At least we should pay attention to that when thinking about linking the different data space. This is why when I look at this big list, of course, there's a much more data spaces out there, not listed in this list, but I think this one is a very representative to introduce the idea. What is, when we call what is a mesh database? So now we see this is a quite wide spectrum within a data space and across a data space. This is why when we're talking about the technology, talking about the business case, what is a function or service we should think about how to bring to the market, we need to put in a broader context. And such a wide context, we put a term is mesh data space. This is why today's talk from our side is mainly focusing on how to solve the interoperability on the 2 levels, technical level and semantic level. What is our practice? And putting the context, what is the customer need in the mesh data space? I believe Herman and Koki already put a lot of introduction and word to describe these 4 different levels. I just maybe add a little bit so that in the next 2 scenarios, it can also link to some terms here. So when I talk about the technology level, it's very much in the component, in the hardware and the software, what is need to provide to this framework. For example, the connectors. And also, for example, now we have the different connectors, data space connector, Eclipse connector, and also identity management. We're seeing that from IDS, we still need a centralized service, the depths to providing this trust. Of course, this is still how we're evolving that. And now GaiaX is introducing the completely federated way. This is a different trend. And of course, we are observing on the market how we can best providing this seamless service to the customers. And of course, we also think about the broker role. And also, for example, this identity authentication, how we can make sure the user in one platform, for example, in our platform, this is specific, then they don't want to do exactly the same to have their own profile and then do everything onboarding again and to connect every single data space. Then what can we do for them? And then we also talk about, for example, in the semantic level, the metadata, the data model. This will be still different in the different data spaces. And this will also can increase this the entry barrier for the data user to describe a data offer and also to make it understandable and also be searchable. Of course, ideally, we want to have a very harmonized and also maybe common understand the data model. But I believe this take a long way because it will affect every data space because also will be changed. Then that's why we are thinking about maybe a tangible way will be trying to provide some function to map and also to convert some of at least our focused the data models. So this is this 2 technical and semantic level, and I'll bring some examples. And then organization level, I think Herman mentioned a lot. I think yesterday in one of the session in the rule books, I think that's also a very nice session. I also learned a lot there. What is a practice? I think a lot of question going on. We were also refer to the rule books to guide us in the organization level. And then of course, legal level, this is definitely a big question. And we don't want to let the technology are moving along, and then also the legal support should be also there. So from a service provider, where our wish would be, we want to provide a nice and also efficient service, also simplify that to the customer. And of course, we want the legal security, the protection is also there. but we don't want to be limited because of there's any limitation from the legal agreement. But this is not easy. When we design the solutions, we are also considering what is feasible, what is can do that. I can also share a bit in our examples. So this is next slide. We see this is a question we are facing, and I mainly focus on the user questions. In this example I bring is we have DIH. It stands for Data Intelligence Hub. This is a data platform from Telecom. It is a platform combined with a marketplace where you can search data, publish data, and subscribe data. And we also have some tools. You can do the data processing and then to help to organize and packaging your data into a proper and nice data offer. But we are also getting the more and more users in our platforms. And I think one of the example I put here is mobility data space, previously called data room mobility. This is also derived and initiated from also Architect. And we are also one partner from the as a platform be connected and also be interactive with this data space. So when we start doing this, and we already find out a lot of questions, as I put a question mark there, how our customer identity can be recognized and can be used in this data space. And also the vocabulary, because we are a very general platform. So you will find a lot of, for example, the public data, weather data, movement data. But mobility data space is very specific, focusing on the automotive industry. And also the broker. So we both have a broker. Mobility data space also have a broker. We have also a marketplace. Of course, we are having different focus. We are more focusing on the user experience. So this is why we design a lot of user features so that you can easily search. You can also do some preview. You can also already plotting some visualization when you publish a data offer. So this is why feel free to check it out, our platform. So that's called dih.telecom.net. So a lot of features, and that's why I think I will not spend time to work through our platform. That's why this is all available on the market. So I can also post the web address afterwards in the link. But I do want to put some attention in what we see our users want. So as I said, we put a lot of effort to design this data publishing process to guide the user step by step what you need in the web browser, have a nice interface and giving the example so that you don't need the necessary technical background to create a data offer. And you are also not be lost, and also you are very well guided. And this is, we did a lot of interview with the data users and from the different industry. That's why we observe this is needed. And of course, this process, you want to do it once and you want to be always reuse it. And then, of course, for the data owner, it is important. He always wants to take the control. So now the data, once your data offer was, let's say, assume you can publish one time and it will be existing in different data spaces, how you can take in the control in the different data spaces. And that's in terms of, when your data offer will be published, who can see that, how you can control the visibility, and in which way they can come access this data set, and how they can, let's say, to acknowledge the policy. And of course, this is also beyond the connector, this part will be also a bit on the organization part. And of course, you don't want to only give in the data, you want to also using the data. So as a participants from our DIH platform, they also want to use a data set from mobility data space. And at the same time, they also want to see, okay, I publish a data offer in mobility data space, how I get noticed, how I can know the people, other participants in the mobility data space, they are using my data set. So all these questions I think is very valid, but every point will lead to a technical question. What kind of service we should enhance our platform so that the user can, let's say, we cannot maybe not completely remove, at least can easier this usage hurdle when the user want to connect to the multiple data spaces. Very specifically, we are also, that's a good thing for this use case, because the IH also built on top of the IDS reference architect. So that is lucky. We are also can say it's IDS participants, and this is also applied to mobility data space. This is already giving the advantage when we are register our the user identity and also our connectors. And of course, the question we're going forward, there will be also other data space that are not using the IDS infrastructure. Then how this identity issue will be done. And also the metadata, I think I mentioned, we are on the different focus of data space. We do need to put additional effort to solve that. And of course, associated to that will be the vocabulary. And also the other part is, one example is, most of our data set on DIH is it is PII, so non-PII, non-personal identifier information. So that makes our life also easier. We don't need to put a need to concern too much on the GDPR. But in the mobility data space, that will be different case. They will be having the mobility data and maybe the movement data. And then once the data any application want to use this different data, or those data will be consumed from the participant from DIH side, do they need to acknowledge this GDPR access? And this is also the questions we need to consider. So in the next example I bring, this is one scenario. We are providing, we call it still a platform as a service. And in this case, as you see here, specific, I think the most suitable case for this specific scenario will be open data, or at least some free data. This is when you go to our platform, you will also see that, for example, I mentioned some geography information, and we do also have some data from the tackles to showing the, for example, a certain time frame, what is a movement of the people, and from the trajectory, the interest of a point, some locations, and some of it's more focused on the research data. For example, here, this one, this is, it is a short name, but actually it is it's a German language question answer data set. I think this is so far the biggest one in the world. And I believe the smart speaker, they all use such a data set to understand the different language, asking the questions, and they will provide the right answers. So those data sets, the good thing is they are mainly under the open data license. So the user, when they publish such a data set, they were, I already write it there. So we have also an interface, we call it the supermarket. So the user has a guided workflow to publish their data offer, and then they will also select the most relevant license. So we call it license because there's most of them, this scenario are used for the open data. So we already provide the most typical open data license. At the same time, the metadata will be mainly focused on the CCAN and then recently also the DCAM. And then the data set, in this case, most of them is be provided over the standard API to our platforms. And the next step is, so now those data offer providers, even though there's an open data, but they don't also think this is relevant and will be also interesting to mobility data space. They want to also make it available in mobility data space. So what they can do means we need to provide a certain functionality to let the user, firstly, to indicate if they want to also publish the data offer beyond the data, the DIH. I think this vendor lock-in concerns is always there. So now it is also the same for data space. You don't want to, I think this is also the Data Governance Act also have this, this article. So this is why we do develop the service to let the user indicate. You can also say you want to go to any data space, and we already pre-configured the different data space we are connected. So this is why the user will have the function to select you want to publish the data offer on DIH and also on the different data space. If yes, then they can also select which ones. And then based on that, all the data description, metadata information, the license will be automatically matched to the different data space. But to do that, to enable such a data transfer in the mesh data space, we developed one function, as I labeled here. This is a data space adapter. From the wording, it's quite explainable. So it's basically adapt a platform from DIH to another data space. In the function-wise, what really it's doing in this data space adapter is the first one, you need to map the metadata information from our DIH platform to, in this case, the mobility data space. They are also using the IDS the metadata. So that's why we need to first do this matching and do the converting. And at the same time, we will provide also an interface to register our connector to the data space. And here will be specifically the identity part, and also the broker to register. We have also our connector. And then the next step is also register the data set, which is transfer and register in DIH connector to the data space, so MDS connectors. And we'll also have another function. This is dedicated data set request from mobility data space over their connector to our DIH interface connector. So by that, the user will have this kept the backend service. They don't need to concern and also to do any service, but we will take care of that and provide still the unified user interface. So, but the good thing for this part is that's most suitable here is we are also concerned about legal liability, because now we basically are transferring a data offer in one platform, ported to another platform. So how that's one very important aspect is how to make sure DIH platform still remain a neutral position. That means we are not part of this contract partners in this data transfer if any data transaction is agreed or happen. And this means we technically will be, we need to definitely transfer completely all the customer policies, descriptions, and then also customer, this open data provider identity completely in over the connector to the mobility data space. It will be visible. And then the next part, I just look at the time, need to be a bit speed up. The similar, I do bring another scenario here. This is a more linked and more streamlined. So this is a more, we just dedicated provide a managed connector. And this connector is basically acting on behalf of the customer and also makes the customer directly visible and also accessible in the data space. And in this case, the customer can directly create a data offer and also to manage everything directly in the connector and link it to the mobility data space. Of course, this case is much easier. And of course, the user will have, let's say, technically, will have directly access and manage on the connector. This is why we build another part, this UI, because now they don't use a platform anymore, but to how to make the user easier to access a connector. And they don't need to think about to deploy it, how to scale it, and also how to make the control. They need a good visibility here. This is why we also have a connector-based user interface. And this is, I'm just looking at time, I think I move to the next slide. This is, I bring one user flow. This is mainly focused on the connector part. To save some time, I put some screenshot to that to illustrate this user flow. But in the short, the user can register their account and their organization in the connector. And there is, we provide called a data space operation user interface. So they can do everything self-service and also configure their connector. And then this connector can be create the data offer directly here. And you will have the overview on what is happening and how many data offer is published and where it is and who are contacting you. At the same time, we will do this part is connecting your connector, customer connector to the dApps in any IDS-based data space. And we were taking and managing this part. And in the end, at the same time, your data offer will be also published and visible on the data space broker. So in this case, the user will be directly viewed as the owner of your data set and also the connector. So as a telecom side, we will be invisible in this process. This is the same, I think that a lot of similar our customer case when they are be part of mobility data space and also the Catena X data space. They were, at least we are mainly providing such this more the linked starting kit to the customer so that they can quickly get started. So this is my last slides. I think I mainly focus on the 2 level of the interoperability, but I do understand there's a lot of other questions there. And I just want to point out one thing is, as yesterday, I think also introduced this 5-step build up the data space. I cannot agree more because it's definitely worth it to also take a look at your business case too at the beginning. This is then also highly depend on what is application need to select the proper service you need. Like the 2 scenario I bring, I do have a list of other scenarios, but it's really design of the different use case. I just looking at the time because this is already 29. Of course, I can elaborate more, but considering time, we can always interact today in the network section, and we'll be also around. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dandan. I think that you're right, we ran out of time, but it was definitely worth it. We saw 3 very interesting presentations, and what I will keep is that you all talk about all the different aspects, very technical, semantic, legal, and organizational that need to be, so to say, aligned for the common goal of us to interconnect data spaces. So as you said, there is a networking break right now, so you can use the time for the next 15 minutes to go back in the network space and maybe have some more discussions on the topic that we just discussed right now. At the same time, I see that in the chat in the last hour, there were so many documents shared with you, so you have a lot of homework to read about the harmonization of data spaces that we are already fostering as an extended community. After the networking, we will have a session about certification and the trust overall. So this is also the theme of Winter Days. Thank you very much from the head office, and we will see you in networking and in 15 minutes with the next session.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
So it's now 10:45, so it's time to start to go on to our next session. So this session is about trust. So it is actually the whole event is about how to bring trust to the data spaces. So I would say this is a really relevant session because we're going to explain how the IDS does that. And I'm very happy to welcome here on stage Monica Juba from Fraunhofer ISEC, Begoña Laibarra from SQS, Jonas Winkel from PwC, and I think more colleagues will join this session.
Yes, Andreas will be joining us as well later on.
Okay, so yes, there he is, Andreas Teuscher from SIG AG.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Andreas.
Hello, Andreas.
Good morning.
Hi. So welcome all, and this is one of the things that I was explaining earlier, that last year we were preparing a lot of the things in the background, and now it's time to actually present and show what we have been working on. So Monica, I leave the stage to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us to the session. We will try to provide you with an overview today on the topic of IDS certification and how it's used to establish trust in data spaces. Don't worry, it will be a little bit built as an FAQ. All the questions that you might have, we will try to answer. And of course, if any questions remain open, just use the chat or join us on stage later on to ask them. First of all, I think the major question that I'm often asked, why do we need certification at all? It always looks like having a lot of effort, But of course, there's a good reason why we try to use it or why we are planning to use it and working on setting everything up. And that's the fact that we have in our international data spaces a data exchange meant to be really available to everyone, to a lot of different companies, not knowing each other beforehand. And that's where certification comes in, because if you know nothing about your communication partner, then you're probably not willing to share your data with him without knowing what might happen to your data if you share it. And that's why IDS certification can support, because it provides a transparent information, what security level your communication partner has, what requirements they fulfill, and what might happen if you provide them with your data. And in order for you not to just have to trust the communication partner, what they tell about themselves, therefore we have the certification scheme with having independent parties evaluate components and organizations to really provide you with reliable information on their setup and their trustworthiness. And that's the basis for you then to decide whether you want to share your data or maybe not, and in particular also under which circumstances or under which policies. What we have prepared for this are actually two different types of certification, focusing on two complementary aspects. The first one being a certification of the organization and their operational environments. So the idea is really ensuring that organizations have secure processes in place, a secure management in place when they operate IDS components, so that you know they definitely have an overview what components they have in the field, and that all of them are secure, and that they also react to security incidents. And the other aspect is naturally really focusing on the technical components. So the components we use in the IDS to exchange data, focused, of course, mainly on the connectors, but also on the additional things such as brokers or clearing houses, where we try to really ensure that all these components are interoperable with each other and that they are naturally built securely, so that you can really trust that your data will not leave the data space without your knowledge. And in order to enable the certification, we naturally need different parties involved. For each certification, we have an applicant, so really the company saying, I want to get a certification, either for myself as an organization following the operational environment certification, or for a component you have developed. And then you get, of course, support with the certification from independent parties. So we have, on the one hand side, evaluation facilities, so really companies that take care of conducting this evaluation of the certification requirements, of ensuring that these requirements are met. Currently, we have 4 companies preparing to become these evaluation facilities and also helping us setting everything up. And we have naturally also the certification body, which is really the central entity taking care that everything works as defined in our specifications, in our schema, and to ensure that the quality is also as you expected. And now, as a starting point for the beginning, the IDS support office is acting as a certification body and helping us set everything up for you. And you might now ask yourself, okay, and what do I have to do if I want to get certified? The overview in general is quite simple. We've got 3 phases in the preparation to that. The most important thing at first is that you really make sure you are certain you can pass the certification. So you prepare your organization, you prepare your components to the state where you think, now you're ready. We will explain what that means a little bit later as well. And then when you are certain that you can pass the certification, then you can actually start the certification process. So you can start this application phase, start the evaluation, and prepare everything that's necessary. And after you have successfully applied for certification, there will be an evaluation phase where an independent party will evaluate whether your component or your organization truly fulfills all the defined evaluation criteria. And we've got as a last step the certification phase. We do not have just a big number of evaluation facilities conducting such evaluations, but we also always have the certification body taking care of this final certification phase, reviewing the evaluation report, checking everything was conducted according to the defined specifications, and then responsible for issuing the certificate in case the evaluation was positive for you and your component or organization. And based on that, we will now take a little bit of a closer look to the topic of component certification first, before later coming to the operation environment certification. As many of you probably have heard already, component certification, it's not just the one certification, but we have different options that you can choose from depending on the use case that you have for your components. So we've got here this matrix. We've got 3 different trust levels and 3 different assurance levels that you can choose from. Some might be a little bit surprised to see this new slide because we have long discussed about the names of these different levels and have decided in our last working group meeting to change them a little bit, going from the terminology of a base, trust, and trust plus connector simply to the terminology of having components with different trust levels, 1, 2, and 3, and always having a short subtitle explaining a little bit better what this profile is targeted to. And for each of these trust levels, the number of requirements to be fulfilled increase, and also, therefore, the trustworthiness of this component. And since it's not only a question what requirements you have to fulfill with your component, but you always also have different possibilities for the depth of the evaluation, whether you fulfill these requirements. We have these 3 assurance levels, starting really with the easiest approach with assurance level 1, where you only have a self-assessment and not yet an external evaluator from an evaluation facility involved, really to provide a low entrance barrier. And we have the higher assurance levels 2 and 3, where we have evaluation facilities conducting the evaluations with their expertise and their outside view of your component and source code and implementation. And now the question is, you saw you have different options. If you want to start your component certification, there are, I think, 5 things that are really important for you to do. The first thing is really familiarize yourself with the criteria catalogs. So the requirements needed for the different trust levels. I'll show a little short overview later on. And then when you know what trust level has which significance with regards to requirements, you can decide what trust level do you want to target with your component. And of course, then also what assurance level do you need for your use case? So is it sufficient having just this assurance level 1 with the self-assessment, or do you need an assurance level 3 evaluation that we formerly called high assurance evaluation, because it really is the most in-depth evaluation we offer. And as soon as you have decided on a trust level in particular, it's important that you make sure that your component then truly fulfills all these requirements. And that's also where the IDS Reference Testbed comes in, that some of you might have heard of already, that can help you make sure that at least with regards to the interoperability requirements, you're really up to par with the current IDS standard. And we will also provide you some more insights on this later on. And then, as soon as you are certain your component is ready, you are sure you fulfill all the requirements and you have tested your component in the reference testbed, then it's really time to start the certification process itself and apply for certification and see whether the evaluation will fit your assessment that you're ready. And I think, here, as promised, a short overview. I'll not go into all the details here, a short overview on the topics covered by our criteria catalogs for component certification. So in general, we've got these 3 big areas that we try to address with our criteria. So we've got on the one hand side, really IDS specific criteria addressing the communication between IDS components, the topic of usage control, but also, for example, operating system security, ensuring that the different applications on your system are properly isolated from each other. And then, of course, it's always a good idea not just to define your own criteria, but also to build on existing standards. And that's why we have the other 2 areas here in the set, where we build on existing standards for security. On the one hand side, the ISO or IEC 6244342, which is a criteria catalog from the industrial area, really addressing a very great overview of security topics with regards to components. And we have some criteria concerning the secure development of your components, so of really ensuring security by design, of properly documenting and testing everything. The full criteria catalog, if you're interested, you can just request from the IDSA. It's not public on the website due to copyright issues, but you can just request it here under that link on the page. And now, after you took a look to the certification criteria, if you think now my component is ready, that's where the IDS Reference Testbed comes in. And at this point, I will hand over to my colleague Begonia Laibara from SQS, and she will give us a short overview what the IDS Reference Testbed is and what it's used for.
And hello, Monica. Hello, all. Okay, I will try to do my best. Okay, to share my slides. Okay.
Yes, it's perfect. I can see.
Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So hello, Monica. My name is. Thanks a lot. Okay, my name is Begonia Laibara, and I work for SQS, and I will be showing you what is the reference testbed. Okay, so far we have seen that the reference architecture model provides design by trust. Okay, gives us somehow a trust in the design, and I think what Monica has explained, which is the certification program, intends or is conceived to provide that trust in the implementation of the components and in the data spaces. No. I think now there is another challenge which arises: how we can guarantee trust in the evaluation results as produced by the different evaluation facilities that will be running around the world. Okay, and I think also how we guarantee trust in the evaluation results or in the results of the interoperability testing provided, but also by the applicants for assurance level number 1. So this can be done in different ways. Okay, and I think IDS has opted for a solution which is to I would say enforce all the evaluation facilities to use the same, I would say, relevant assets. When I mean relevant assets, they are enforcing us to use the same reference testbed, and they are enforcing us to use the same reference test cases to validate the different catalog criteria. And therefore, the reference testbed you are going to see here is really what the evaluation facilities are going to use, we are going to use to test your components. And there's another challenge now, which is to, I would say, facilitate the developers of components, I would say a cost-effective development of components which are aligned with the certification criteria. I think the reference testbed, as Monica has mentioned, is a very, very good instrument for developers of components to verify not only that they comply with the certification criteria, but it's a very good tool to test the components along the development lifecycle. So let me have a look to what is really the reference testbed. So the reference testbed is an infrastructure which is in constant evolution. What do I mean? Because it has to be aligned with the evolution of the reference architecture model, and because in the end it will have to contain all the components in the model. Currently, only, and you will see later, current setup that only contains some of the components of the reference architecture implements, as you can see there, a viable IDS architecture using validated open source components, which is important. It is offered as a tool set because it is offered in combination with different, I would say, utilities, such a way that it is useful for testing and for data transfer activities, So far, 2 testbeds have been published. Okay, the last one is Reference Testbed version 1.1. You can download it from there. It was published yesterday, and it was a small evolution, I would say, from the prior testbed, which is 1.0. I wanted to highlight it here because for you to show that it's a living tool, which are even in constant evolution. So let's have a look. What is the current setup, okay, of this testbed? So current setup, reference version 1.1, represents a minimum viable infrastructure. Okay, so it contains two connectors, which are the data space connectors. They are version 7. In the prior testbed, reference testbed version 1.0, it was DSC version 6, so it has been an evolution there. Okay, it contains the broker, dApps, and a local CA. All these components can be deployed manually by you following the guidance, but they can be automatically deployed. And if you automatically deploy it, you will get a pre-configured setup. Okay, in this pre-configured setup, okay, you will see that identity certificates, as you can see here, okay, they are already, I would say, included in the components. Okay, you will get also additional identity certificates, I think up to 10, so you can use them to create your new components. But you can also create your own identity certificates using the local CA we are providing. In addition to this, we are providing a Postman collection. As said before, the testbed is offered as a tool set. So our intention is to offer small tools, utilities, helping you to, I would say, develop on top of that. Okay, testing or data space creation. So let's have a look at the Postman. In version 1.1, the Postman collection, we have 2 very simple Postman collections. The first one is the Postman collection consists to verify the installation you have performed. So basically what you can do is you can request the self-description of the data broker, the DSC. You can test the interoperability between the connectors. You can register the connector in the metadata broker, and you can query, for instance, the list of connectors. Okay? So it's how to verify the installation is up and running. And then the second one, the second Postman collection is focused on showing you how to configure to perform a data transfer between data space connector A and data space connector B. Data space connector A is configured as a data provider by default, and B is conceived as consumer. Therefore, we offer, I would say, we let you, I would say, create a catalog in the provider, let you register the resource in the metadata broker, and we also help you from the data space consumer. You can request for data. The data really is a file with weather data. Okay, I think you can see all that in the session. I see this after this session. There is another session where you can get to know how to operate with it. Okay. So then, as said before, it's in constant evolution. We have plans for the future. We are now testing, validating new components. So we plan to have a testbed version 2.0. I don't know the dates. Okay, where we plan to include 2 new components, which is the Paris and the OCSP. And we plan to include a new utility, as said before, which is the automated test set. This test suite, excuse me. This automated test suite will contain at least the interoperability test cases that should be executed by all those developers applying for security level number 1, as Monica has said before. Okay, so this is planned for version 2.0. So, and then, as a summary, what is and who for is the testbed? I would say that it is for me, it's a good to test the component all along the development life cycle of a component. I would introduce it since the very beginning. It's obviously it's focused on interoperability testing. That's clear. It is focused, as Monica has said before, also to help you prepare the certification if you want to go for any of the different, I would say, roadmaps. Okay. And I think it is a very, very good tool to start the pilot of the data space. Okay, so it's a minimum viable infrastructure. And who is it for? Also essential for me, for newcomers to IDSA. It's a very good tool to train and to understand the architecture. It's a right tool for developers of both components and data spaces, for evaluation facilities. It is going to be a must for all of us, and for applicants of assurance level number 1. And what is the suggestion of a roadmap? If I have a component, I would suggest you to start executing the script and executing the Postman collection and to verify that everything is up and running. Then I would integrate my component. That can be done in 15 minutes following the guidelines. And after that, you are ready to test the interoperability, functional and technical, of your component or of your components, any type of component, with a testbed. And once you are clear, you are sure that your component is, I would say, ready to be certified, there are 2 different roads. If you apply for assurance level 1, then you go step 4 and 5. And if you go for an assurance level 2 or 3, then you need an evaluation facility to validate your component, then you go to the step number 6. You send your component to the evaluation facility. At the moment, we are in this point, okay? So you can complete steps 1, 2, and 3. We are currently working on the preparation of the automatic test suite, and we are currently working on the specification of test cases that will be executed by the evaluation facility. So I hope this will be soon. And this is all from my side. So if you have any question, please don't hesitate to ask me. Okay, I will say right here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Begonia. Yeah, if there are any immediate questions, just write in the chat and we'll address them right now. Otherwise, we also have a few minutes at the end of the session for overall questions, and you can come back to us at that point. Since no questions are directly popping up, I'll take over the screen share again. Yeah, now you can see it. For the next part, yeah, we will really explain how we continue from this IDS reference testbed to really provide you with assurance level 1 for components, so what we formerly called checklist approach. Unfortunately, Sascha Hackel from Fraunhofer Focus, who wanted to present this to you, is ill today, so I'll take over for him. And I hope that I can provide you with all the important information nonetheless. I think the first important thing, again, let's briefly revisit why we actually have this assurance level 1. The idea behind assurance level 1 is really that we provide a solution where you can have a checklist self-assessment and do some initial automated interoperability testing. It really is a focus on providing a certification profile that offers a low entrance barrier so that you can really easily do that. Also, if you just want to try out the data space, I think you definitely need to be aware that in this type of assurance level, the assessment or the evaluation is really merely conducted by the developer of the component. So you're just doing the self-assessment and, of course, an initial set of tests to ensure the interoperability, but there will not be this more in-depth look of an independent evaluator really taking a look at the component, but more just the certification body observing that you really are certain that your component fulfills all the requirements, but without taking a look at the components ourselves. That, of course, also results in a shorter certification process, but of course with less assurance or less guarantees for users of such components and their communication partners. Here I've brought to you a short overview of the different steps of an evaluation of the certification process for following assurance level 1. As explained before, I think the most important step is always the preparation before. So really this first step on top here where you really prepare your components for certification, in particular by downloading the reference testbed that was just introduced. So really check and see that everything works before you start or before you apply for the certification. And then, the certification process actually starts with this application that's here in the second image. There it's fairly easy. You just contact the certification body, say, hey, I want to get my component certified. You fill out some application form, and then you already have passed the application stage and can start with the evaluation phase. Here, as explained in the evaluation phase, you will not have an external evaluator doing the evaluation, but you will do the evaluation yourself. But of course, we do not leave you to it completely on your own, but we have prepared guidance for you. So we've prepared a questionnaire that we will take a look to in the next minutes that will help you with conducting this self-assessment. So it will lead you through all the criteria that you need to fulfill and ask you questions, helping you ensure that your component really fulfills these requirements. And based on input from the test suite, we will get a configuration file for, the input from the questionnaire. We will get a configuration file that can then be used for this automated test suite that Begonia also explained already, where it will really be the test suite executing automated test cases based on this generated configuration file and providing you with a log file as an output that you can then hand into the certification body together with the completely filled out questionnaire. And in the last step, the certification body will take a look at the things you provided and ensure that all the questions in the questionnaire were answered correctly and that the results from the test suite are correct. And to briefly take a look at the current status of these assets that we require here for the assurance level 1. We've got for the questionnaire a first draft of questions ready. We are still conducting the final review of all these questions to really ensure we have thought of everything and the questions are understandable. And in parallel are working on also setting this questionnaire up technically. So we have an implementation of the questionnaire and we are currently integrating this into a website called the IDSA certification portal that will, as soon as this assurance levels 1 certification is finally launched in mid of this year, there it will be available to click through and to access it there. And the second asset we are working on is the automated test suite. We have an initial test set up covering approximately 10 criteria that can be easily tested with black box testing from the outside. And of course, it's an initial first version. We are also here working on integrating more test cases to cover more criteria, also to cover the criteria necessary for the broker certification. And the other next step would be that while the automated test suite is currently a separate asset, we are planning to also integrate this directly into the test bed and use the pre-configured setup there as a basis for these tests. That's also on the roadmap for the test bed. And now you might ask yourself, what exactly does this questionnaire look like? And that's why we've brought some screenshots for you of the current implementation of the tool to show you what you can expect if you try to do this assurance level 1 certification. Here you can see the administrator view that the IDS certification body will have. You can enter this platform, and then you can see here on the one hand side all the filled out forms from people, and most important, you can add a new user whenever someone comes and applies for certification. You can add a new user and provide them with their username and password to access the certification portal. And then here in the second step, you can see what happens if you as an applicant then log on to this certification portal, and you will reach this entry slide or entry image where you can then choose to either start filling out a new questionnaire, either for connectors or for brokers, or you can of course also save the current status of your questionnaire and then continue it later on. And you can here also generate this configuration file that we need for the test suite. And then as a next step, if you say, okay, now I want to fill out the questionnaire, the view you will have is this one. You will be led through a series of questions, always asking you questions based on the certification criteria, having always a question and then some answers, some answering options that you can click through, and then you can just step through the questionnaire, fill it out, and at the end send it to the certification body for review. And here now we are in the admin view again. If the certification body wants to evaluate this finalized questionnaire, then they enter here, search for an applicant, select that they want to see the results from this questionnaire, and can then assess the output or the the input in this questionnaire from the applicant. And yeah, most of the criteria will be evaluated automatically based on the options that are provided. There are only some fields where you really have to enter some plain text, but the certification body will do a manual check and assign here and pass or fail based on the information provided. And that's all for our overview on assurance level 1. I'll quickly take a look at the chat because someone raised a question there asking what happens if you have an already certified IDS component. Here, that's actually the great thing about our certification scheme. If a component is already certified and you're just using it in a completely unchanged way, of course, doing some configuration, but not really changing anything about the source code or the setup, then you can just reuse this component. You do not have to do a certification process again. But the idea is really, that we always certify, let's say, the setup of this component, and you can then instantiate it as often as you want and run many such certified components. The only thing that's necessary as well, if you buy a certified IDS component, will be the operational environment certification, but we'll come to that a little bit later. Now going from assurance level 1 with the self-assessment and the checklist approach to the higher assurance levels, I will hand over to Andreas Teuscher from SIG AG, who are also planning to be one of the evaluation facilities, will provide you a short overview what happens for these higher assurance levels. Hello, Andreas.
Thank you very much, Monica. Are you the who will?
I'm sharing, and I will click through as soon as you tell me to.
You are the clickery.
Yes.
Okay, so the next slide, please.
Yes.
Okay, let me give you a short introduction. Why is SIG have an interest in the certification of components and what are different components levels? So first of all, for all of you who does not know our company, we are heavily deep in industrial automation, and therefore we have a good and deep understanding what industrial components and gateways should be implemented in the field, but more in the field of high availability, high security standards. And therefore we are aiming for a test certification center. We are giving you an overview. What are the I would say that the steps towards the certification of level 2 and level 3 components. So first of all, if you have any questions, you should go to the website of IDSA. There you find different areas of testing. As Monica described before, there is the self-assessment, there will be the automated test suite soon. But if you have a real interest in do a conformity assessment, you have to write IDSA an email which says, okay, we are looking forward to, for example, have a certification or assurance testing for a particular component. It could be the gateway component, it could be, that means the connector, it could be the identity provider, and it could be several other components. Then normally SIG will receive an inquiry from the IDSA, or we get in touch directly. So then we set up an inquiry clarification meeting. That means that is a meeting, I think it's fair to say it's a workshop, so that you can give us an overview, what is your implementation, hand over the necessary and recommended documents, as well as your component. And then we do the installation, the kickoff meeting. Our aim is in the kickoff meeting either in or after the kickoff meeting, get the component up and running. Of course, there will be some clarification, and especially when it goes into the implementation in the testbed, because we are using the same testbed as mentioned before. But our view of the testbed is we will implement these components which are the device under test. Normally, we expect to see, especially for the first tests or conformity tests, that there are some, configurations and optimizations, so that the component is running in this test environment properly. After that, this is set up. That means all the basic components. That means the connector, or at least two connectors, because we have to test the end-to-end communication, and the identity provider. That means we are using X509 certificate, as well as the broker. They are up and running, so they can see each other, and after that we will proceed with the test execution. That means for each individual, depending on your expectation and your level of trust, we are using the IDSA profiles for testing. So we are running the tests, and after the tests, of course, there will be a report. And after the report is created, there is a closing meeting, and hopefully after we have discussed some clarification questions, we are able to give you a positive feedback, and then we have sent also the report to the accreditation body. In that terms, it is the IDSA itself. I'm not sure, Monica, if you will elaborate a little bit later on that, but in long term, the view or the perspective will be that the accreditation body will be an official one besides the IDSA. Why is that so? It's very easy, because if you have an official, let me say, ISO accreditation, there are several accreditation bodies who can double check the certification body. But this is more in the long term. And after that, IDSA will certify or issue the certificate. That means that you will receive an official and a formal certificate for each individual component, as well as, and I'm also not sure if you will discuss it later on, of course, you have to, if you see the component not only for one business case, more in a larger ecosystem, this component will later on also get access to the complete IDS data space, so that you can share data not only with one customer, more in a brighter ecosystem phase with each customer which is certified and attached to the IDSA ecosystem. So that's a brief overview. How does it work? Maybe if you go to the next slide, I can give you also a short introduction on the existing test facilities. What you can see here is it's more industrial test facility for laser scanners. This cabinet on the left side here, it's a black box which have some connectors, and on the right hand side it goes, and the connectors are mainly connected to SPS. And inside you see, no, you can't see, because it's visually protected because of the laser scanners. If they have a failure or something like that, it's locked in this cabinet. And on the right hand side you see the monitor of our Achilles test generator. And what you can also see is that we, after the negotiation with the IDSA, that our plan is to become an accredited test facility. Of course, we have a lot of know-how in the area of industrial testing with sensors, with actors, SPS, and industrial PCs. So the next slide, please. So our test facility is currently under construction because we are in the working group of, we are participating in the working group certification on the creation of the test plans. As Monica already mentioned before, we furthermore, we support the IDS Reference Testbed to clarify the last technical questions. Of course, if you do it in a first time and you put the things together, and there are several, let me say, test facilities and several components which are not yet fully specified, there is always a little bit, you know, things to do to optimize. But nevertheless, we are convinced that we will reach. I don't know if there is a final point for the test bed. Monica, maybe you can mention that later on. But we are participating in that, and the idea is that we have a complete, let me say, the same components which are in the test bed with the same versions. Are running in the test beds. They must also run and, you know, operate it in the test center and in the conformance facilities. To provide, SIG also provide feedback to the certification process proposals. Of course, we are in the middle of, you know, developing these different processes and test suites, and we, as I said before, I think we are convinced that we will reach that goal together with the other partners in IDS. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Andreas, for this overview on evaluation facilities and their preparation for the assurance level 2 and level 3. From there, if you have any open questions concerning the component certification, please just feel free to write them in the chat, and we'll address them in the Q&A at the end of the session. For now, I think we will close the topic of component certification and, as long awaited, go to our other type of certification, namely the operational environment certification for organizations and their processes. And I'm very glad to have for that here also our expert on that, Jonas Winkel from PwC. And I'll hand over the word to him and click for him whenever he tells me that he wants to have the next slide.
Thank you very much, Monica. Yeah, I'm Jonas Winkel from PwC, and I'm with IDS and the IDS Working Group for Certification in specific now since a few years, and I'm mostly working in close collaboration with Monica and Alexei Rezetko, who is a colleague of mine and also co-head of Working Group Certification. Yeah, similar to Andreas and the SIG, we are from PwC. We are also planning to becoming an evaluation facility, but for the component certification. Yeah, this maybe as a little introduction. Monica, if you could switch the slides. I will now go only into details regarding the differentiation to the component certification, because the basic principle of certifications are the same for both types of IDS certification. So we are also working with evaluation facilities with certification body. We also follow the general progress or process that we have a kickoff meeting and conducting an evaluation, writing a report, and giving out a certificate, which is this is the same as for operational environment, sorry, for component certification. And yeah, but now more like, so now more to the operation environment, but what is the focus of the certification? The focus is on the surroundings or the aspect regarding the operation of an IDS component. So if you're operating or using an IDS component, your organization, you have some of processes, working methods, technology, people who are working in this context, and this is all summarized as so-called operational environment. And we want to take a look at this operation environment and certify it, because the ways of working here have an impact on the security of the IDS or the IDS component and the data shared in the IDS. As you may see on this slide, we have the setup is also the setup, and the overview of the options is also similar to the component certification. So we have also have 3 trust levels and 3 assurance levels. The trust level going hand in hand with rising numbers of criteria. So for first trust level, we have only the very basic criteria, and for the third trust level, then we have all criteria of our catalog, where I will go into detail a little bit later. We have chosen these 3 trust levels to address different use cases, which are given in the subtitles here. So, for example, the first trust level is for the enterer into data sharing. So if you are new in the IDS environment, or you are a little company who just want to try out a little bit the IDS or one of its components, then this trust level would be probably the right choice for you. On the other hand, next to the trust levels, we have the assurance level. So there's a basic principle that with each assurance level, it's costs more effort to get it certified and evaluated. But on the other hand, the assurance and the reliability of this certification is rising. So, for example, we have here, as also in the component certification, we have here the self-assessment, which is currently in the build-up. So we don't have a tool yet, but we are working on this. For example, self-assessment is also a self-declaration. So the participant who want to get certified would declare that he would fulfill the criteria which are required for trust level 1 here. And for the next assurance level, we have we are working with an evaluation facility, and they will check if all criteria are fulfilled, and if they are implemented correctly. This is a short overview here. If you can maybe switch to the next slide. Now we have the question how to get certified, what should be maybe in preparation. The basic principle is that the organization who is operating or using this IDS component should work securely and should working after defined processes. If you want to, or if you're building up something, it would be a good idea to orient toward the ISO 27001 processes or requirements, because our criteria are related with these. So if you are building up a secure environment, it would be a good start before applying for the operational environment certification. And in the process for the application, maybe it would also be a good idea to go to your internal compliance or security teams, because they may have some experience with this kind of certifications. For example, if your company already have ISO 27001 or another security relevant certificate here. For the concrete evaluation and certification, how to prepare for this, it's important to, especially for the assurance level 2 or 3, where an evaluation facility comes into, it's important to have major points documented or major processes documented, so you can show the evaluation facility how you're working, and that you're working after these processes. And also the conduction of a process should be documented. So if you so that you can show that these processes are alive, so that are not only written down once, but they are also lived by these processes. And in the end, yeah, as I said in the beginning, the processes are all relevant in the context of development, maintenance, operations, and usage of the IDS components. So this is the general context here. You can now switch. Very good. Thank you. To give you a little bit more insight, it's what topics, what requirements are into this operation environment, or which topics are relevant here. We have listed here some of, or we are listing all of the domains of our criteria. So behind every of these domains, multiple criteria are listed. Not all criteria of all domains are relevant for all trust levels. So there's a differentiation here. I won't go now through everybody in detail, which this would be a little bit too much. But maybe, yeah, an example here, for example, the security incident management, which is general the processes, how to work with security incidents. So if an incident is coming up, how you react on this. And for example, here we would have more criteria regarding, okay, is there a policy in place who set up the general, or who describes how security incidents are handled in general, if the responsibilities are clear, so if everybody knows what to do in case of a security incident. Or reporting is also a topic here. So are the security incidents who are identified are reported to the responsible parts, responsible positions. Also an assessment. So if a security incident is coming up, you should to assess how critical it is, what would be the possible consequences. So then you can react in the right way and yeah, enable the correct measures here. And this would be then the response phase, and also learning activities would also be a point regarding security incident management. So, and for this example now, security incident management, you see there are a lot of different aspects which should be respected and which should be fulfilled in an organization to securely work in the IDS. So, and this is why we have this operation environment certification. And yeah, we want to have it. We follow operation environment and component certification. We follow the same general process, but yeah, now you may have had a little deeper insight in what are the differences in detail.
Wonderful. Thank you a lot, Jonas, for taking us with you into this world of operational environment certification. Maybe just a short comment on my side, again, addressing that question from Iva Krasteva in the chat, with regards to what happens if I want to reuse an already certified component. As I said before, for components, then you are lucky. You do not have to do any certification in addition, because you can just reuse this already certified component, as each of these components can be instantiated multiple times. The topic that you might need to address on your side then is this operational environment certification, because every company that really is responsible of operating and administering an IDS component also needs to have one of these profiles in the operational environment certification. So this is definitely something that you have to keep in mind if you want to operate an IDS component yourself. Naturally, the alternative is searching for a service provider that will operate the component for you. If they are the ones doing the administrating and taking care of security incidents and stuff like that, then it's naturally on their responsibility to have this kind of certification.
Maybe one short remark from my side regarding reusing existing certifications. So, for example, if you have already an ISO 27001 certification for your organization, then you can reuse it Also, you still have to do the operational environment certification of the IDS, but you can use a lot of documents, a lot of evidence and process you can reuse in our certification. So then our certification would be shorter and easier to fulfill. Maybe this also a hint regarding reusing certificates.
Thanks a lot for that. Great. And with that, we actually come to an end from our FAQ on certification and this providing of an overview. Here on the slide, you can again see all the different parties involved and whom to question for what, with the different topics of what do I do if I have questions or want to start a certification according to one of the assurance levels. But of course, also, if you want to try out the testbed, just feel free to raise an issue in the repository listed here. Our testbed team will be happy to help. And of course, in particular, the SQS team that's presenting the testbed later on in the dedicated session just on the testbed can definitely also help you with a lot of issues here. And you are also free to join our future sub-working group that we will start soon on the testbed topic. So really everyone who wants to support with the further development of the IDS reference testbed, just reach out to us and join this sub-working group that we are setting up at the moment. Or of course, if you're just interested into certification in general, then join our normal working group on certification and join all the discussions. And coming to the question from Rainer Sträten in the chat as well. I don't know, Jonas,
yeah.
You want?
Genau. The BSEC5, thank you for the question, Rainer. The BSEC5 is also a certification more present in the German area here. We can also reuse it and shorten the operation certification, operational environment certification. Because we built our criteria are coming in parts also from the C5, so we can reuse a lot of it if you are already certified there and shorten this process.
Thanks a lot, Jonas. Now, are there any remaining questions?
Here's also an additional comment to organizational certification. I think it's very helpful for the smaller ones because ISO 27001 is maybe some small mid-size company feels too overburdened about that. I think it's a good way to deal with this animal. If you look at the cybersecurity check for IT or cybersecurity check for OT, this is also very helpful. You can find this recommendation on the IDSA website, or for the German listeners, it is also recommended by the VDMA and the ZVE, as well as the German oversight authority BSI. You can find it also on their website.
Thanks a lot. Maybe one final comment before I hand back to you, Sonja, on the question from Lars, because he asked whether we could give an indication on other certifications that might help shorten the process of certification. I think for our operational environment certification at the moment, it's mainly the ISO 27001 and the BSEC5. But of course, also the future European Cloud Standard Catalog that's currently still in preparation. Of course, we will also take care that we can reuse stuff from there. And with regards to components, naturally, if you have one of the certifications that we build on, so the ISO IEC 62443, or a common criteria certification that takes care of a lot of these development topics as well, we can naturally always reuse documentation and information from there. And for other certifications, just ask us and we'll take a look at them. We, of course, always are willing or would like to make this as low effort for you as possible. And I think with that, I hand back to you, Sonja, and thank you everyone for listening to our certification session.
One additional hint for the component certification we have is DIN Spec 27070, which will be now feeded into the ISO standardization process. I think that's a very helpful documentation, which gives you, you know, a little bit more in depth what are the requirements for if you are a software developer.
That's, of course, a very, very good hint. Thanks, Andreas. This standardized version of our IDS certification criteria catalog is naturally this DIN Spec 27070. And of course, that can also be built on. Thanks. And now finally, back to you, Sonja.
Okay, thank you so much, Monica, and thank you, four of you, for this great presentation. I think it's now clear why what the IDS certification is about and how to prepare for it. Also very important. And let's move on to the next session. So you've seen already the IDS Reference Testbed is a key asset for the certification process. And now we're going to finally see what the IDS Reference Testbed is and how it works. So let me welcome on stage my colleague Arjan.
Thank you, Sonja, and thank you for the presentation on the certification. It was indeed very fruitful. I enjoyed it very much, and also Begonia mentioned about the testbed during the certification presentation. So I would like to pick up here and continue with the testbed because it's maybe unclear to some of the participants what is our testbed. I will also briefly overview. I will share my desktop and just maybe share with you a graphical representation of the testbed. And well, if you're a company or if you're just a developer and you would like to test your connector, and in the center of the picture, you can see this is the connector under test. It could be a data spaces connector, or it could be just something that you have on your local system. You want to test it, or your company's connector. You can go to our GitHub repository and download the testbed. Testbed is a modular software which can be installed on a virtual machine, something like a Ubuntu virtual server. And it contains different parts. On the left side, we see the broker, which acts like a search engine for metadata. So a company could request metadata from the broker. And we have certification authority, which is not to be mistaken with the certification process, which previously was discussed. This certificate authority is using private public key mechanism to issue certificates like X509 certificates. Of course, this one is not suitable for a live environment. This is only for the test purpose. In live environment, we can have real certificate authorities. And then on the right side, we have DApps, or Dynamic Attribute Provisioning System, which is basically a OAuth-based system, and it generates tokens. So different connectors could use these tokens to sort of log into the system. And we have two test connectors, connector A, which is acting as a data provider, and connector B, which is acting as a data consumer. So I shared with you in the chat the link to our GitHub repository. You can go to the GitHub repository and follow the install script, follow the documentation to install the testbed on your virtual machine. I will share the link again in the chat, but we will have Aitor and Yosu from SQS, and they will be kindly demonstrate how to install the testbed. So welcome, Aitor, welcome, Yosu. It's really good to have you here with us. And I can maybe hand the stage over to you so you can get into the installation process. Then at the end, we will be open to questions or comments.
Okay, thank you for presenting us. Well, Aitor and I are going to make a demo of the actual IDS testbed, showing how to install the reference testbed, how to connect a new component in this demo, we are going to install a new data space connector and how to test if this new component works properly with the other components in the testbed. So, well, I will start sharing my screen so that you can see. Okay, can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, first of all, I just wanted to do a brief summary of the IDS testbed. I will guide you through it. So here we have a certification authority. We have the data space connector A and B. The A is acting as provider and the B is acting as consumer. And we also have the metadata broker and the omitted dApps. We have a file change management that is to agree on future releases of the testbed and the procedure to follow them. Also, there is an installation guide in order to set up manually the testbed, going through each of the components configuration step by step. We also provide the possibility to install automatically the testbed with this install script. And just to finalize with this intro, we have also preparing pre-configured setup document that is has all these required steps to make in the different components in order to have the complete resource at the data space connector acting as provider, register to the broker the different components, start the contract negotiation between them, and search for connector information at the metadata broker. All of this pre-configured setup documentation is available within a Postman collection, that is this one. You have in the GitHub repository. And well, with this I end with this testbed introduction. And now I'm going to show you how to install a new data space connector into the testbed. So to show you, I have installed the testbed repo, the actual one, and I have also installed a new data space connector from the GitHub repository of the data space connector. So the changes we have to make in order to adapt it to our environment are the following ones. First, we have to enter in the data space connector, go to the folder src main resources. All of this is included in the documentation of the GitHub repository of the IDS testbed. And you have to go to the application properties file, and here you have to change the following lines. First of all, you have to change the server port to point to another port. We are going to use 8082 for this demonstration. And next, we have to change the lines for the omitted dApps to point out to our local testbed dApps. So we have to change these lines. And also this one. And put the port of apps. And the last change we have to make in this document is changing the TLS for the calls that are going to be made in the testbed. So we have to change this line 159, and we have to change this key store localhost to point out to our new TLS certificate. We are going to, for example, put connector C. So we save the file, and these application properties we have currently deployed and configured. So the next step, we have to go to conf file folder, go to config.json file, and we have to change here from test mode of the connector to productive mode. We also have to change the line 16. This is for clarification and for the broker to search more efficiently and to know as easily that this is the connector we want. So I'm going to put, for example, connector HTTPS connector C. And then we also have to change in line 34 for clarification reasons this access URL. We are going to put connector C and the actual port in which this is, that is 8082, that we have configured in the application properties file. So with this, just the final step we have to do is changing this key store with the certificate we are going to use. That is going to be testbed 5 point p12. Okay, we save the file. So now we have to insert here the certificate we are going to use. For doing so, we are going to go to the repository of the IDS testbed. We go to the certificate authority folder, and here in data third, we have the different certificates we are using in the testbed. The testbed 1 and testbed 2 are being used by the dataspace connector A and dataspace connector B. The testbed 3 certificate is being used by the Omedin dApps, and the testbed 4 is being used by the metadata broker. So we are going to use the testbed 5 for this example. So I open a new terminal, and I am going to obtain from this testbed 5 CRT and key, I'm going to obtain the P12 certificate. So I need to use the following command. It's this one. So with it, I have created the testbed 5 P12. I copy it and I paste it in the folder of the dataspace connector new that we want to implement. And here I just want to point out that we have testbed from testbed 5 to testbed 10 certificate included in the IDS testbed repository in order to be used by any user that want to implement a new component in the testbed. And okay, so now I'm going to go to the dApps to show you that is correctly configured. So I go to the IDS testbed repo, I go to the Omedin dApps folder, and here if I go to keys, they are inserted all the testbed certificates from 1 to 10. So the dApps knows that this certificate is valid, and in the config file folder, you have to include this new client in the Omedin dApps. This is testbed 5.3. So if I go to this client's YAML, I can see here that it has been inserted the corresponding certificate, that is this client ID, and as you can see here, is testbed 5.3 included. And we have also included from 6 to 10 so that a new user that wants to implement any component can use these certificates that are in the testbed. Okay, so now the next step we need to do here is to generate the corresponding TLS for the dataspace connector. So we go to the folder of the dataspace connector new that we are trying to introduce in the testbed, and we need to do the following command. So I will paste it here. We need to create a connector C and connector C CRT and key. That these ones were introduced in the application properties file previously, and we say that the TLS for the course in the testbed was going to be connector C point P12. So from here, I have created the connector C CRT and connector C key, and I am going now I am going to obtain the corresponding connector C P12 certificate. All of these commands are included in the testbed, so I just copy pasting them, but you can search for it at any moment. Okay, so with this, I have the correct TLS for this new component, and now I have to include this connector C.CRT certificate inside the trustor of each of the dataspace connectors. So I go to the testbed repo, I go to the dataspace connector A, and I go to the trustor that is in RSRC main resources conf, and here I open the trustor P12, and I am going to insert this testbed and this connector C CRT. Okay, so I click here to add import trusted certificates, and I go to the folder, and I am going to insert this connector C CRT. Okay, so it's saying that it's correctly imported, and just to check, here we can see there is connector A and B that are actually inserted in the trustor of that is included in the IDS testbed repo, and I have just included this connector C CRT. So I'm going to save it, I close it, and then this one I have to paste it in the other data space connector. So I go to data space connector B, resources, conf, and I delete this one and paste the actual one. And this I need to do also in the new component we are currently installing. So with this, I have finalized to deploy correctly this new component. So I'm going to build it. So in the folder of the data space connector C, I'm going to use this command docker build -t dsc point, and it's going to build this data space connector. And the actual installation of the testbed is around 12 to 15 minutes. And if it is the first time, if not, it's going to be quicker. It's more or less 3-4 minutes. So now I am going to also run the installation script that is here in Winterdays. I'm going to run this installation script that is in the actual in the IDS testbed repo. So it's going to launch the script. Is going to deploy the omitting dApps, the data space connector A, data space connector B, and metadata broker, and it's going to make a check if it is correctly deployed or not. Okay, so here we just have to wait a little bit. Here it's launched the dApps. Okay, we have created the image of this new connector, the data space connector C. So now we are going to run the command in order to deploy it. That is docker run the port and the name of the connector and the image that it's been using.
While we wait for the setup of the testbed, I want to quickly mention that the passwords he used for the trash store and the password he's going to use for the web UIs, they're all in the testbed, so they're all open to you for access.
Okay, the script is running for the testbed repo, and we have currently launched this new component, the IDS data space connector C. So we are going to check in the browser if it is running correctly or not. Here I have this call, so I do HTTPS localhost 8082 API docs, and actually it's not running because it is still not up and running. We have to wait a few minutes, and maybe I am going to explain if you go to the data space connector repository, if you go to the documentation, there is in the section documentation data model, there is it is explained how to configure the data space connector in order to be set as a data provider. So the necessary steps are creating a catalog, creating a resource, and you have to add this resource to the catalog. The resource is the actual offer that is going to be ready in the data space connector. And you also have to create the corresponding rule. This is you have to use a usage policy for the data, for example, provide access or anytime usage, duration usage policy. In the actual testbed Postman collection, we have used a provide access usage policy. And then you need creating this rule, you need to create a contract and add the rule to the contract. And also you need to create the corresponding artifact that this is going to have the data for the data offer for the test for this data space connector acting as provider, and then you have to create the representation. You need to link these ones, and you need to link also the representation and the contract to the resource. So I will check how it's going to. Okay, it's installing the data space connector B for the moment, so we can check in the browser if it is running this data space connector C. Okay, so here I accept, and now it should enter in the Swire UI of the data space connector C. It's taking a few moments. Okay, and now it has entered this data space connector C in HTTPS localhost 8082, and I'm going to see the script. Okay, it's building the data space connector B. Okay, so now it should appear the screen of data space connector B here. Okay, and now just we have to wait for the metadata broker to be deployed.
Could we go over the test that we're gonna go through when this is ready while we wait?
Okay. Well, as I explained before, in the testbed there is a Postman collection with the calls for it. So I'm going to open it. Well, this is the testbed guide that is actually in the GitHub repository of the IDS testbed. But we have created a technical interoperability Postman calls in order to test our new data space connector C deployment in this IDS testbed environment. So here we have in the testbed we have these two Postman collections. The preconfiguration one is, as I have shown you before, in the repo of the data space connector. In this one has this configuration, so I'm going to guide you through it. Here we create an offer. In the second call we create a correct catalog, and we add this offer to the catalog. We also create the rule with the provide access usage policy. We create the contract, and we add the rule to the contract. And the next step is creating the artifact, creating the representation. The artifact has the actual data that is provided by the data space connector. We have their weather data of one URL, and then we add this artifact to the representation and add the representation to the offer. And we also need to do the dependency of linking this contract to the offer also. And then we have two calls. One is register connector A at the metadata broker and register connector B at metadata broker. And then we are going to check if it is successfully registered there. So let me check if it's all going correctly. Okay, so here the installation script has ended, and it has checked that it has been successfully deployed the omitting dApps, the data space connector A, B, and the metadata broker. So just for make sure, I'm going to show you through the browser how to search for these components. the data space connector, well, the DAPS is located at localhost 2.:4567, and the data space connector A is configured at port 8080. So you search for HTTP localhost 8080 IP docs, and it will show you as explained in data space connector C. And then data space connector B is in 8081, and localhost can be accessed at HTTPS localhost, and it's going to show the metadata of the metadata broker. Now I'm going to do the Postman collection calls. I'm going to check the technical interoperability of this new component. I have first of all, we are going to check how to obtain its own self-description of this data space connector C to check that it's communicating correctly with the DAPS. And let's check if it's working correctly or not. Send the request. Okay, so it gives us a status code 200, and here we can see the self-description of the data space connector C. Here in line 7, there is a HTTP connector C that we have configured in the configuration file in order to be more understandable this metadata and which connector we are searching for information. Then we have we are going to obtain the self-description of connector A from data space connector C. And here we can see that we have obtained the self-description of connector A. Then we are going to check if this new component that has been inserted in the testbed is communicating with the metadata broker. So we are going to try to obtain the self-description catalog list of this metadata broker. And as we can see here, it's showing us the list of connectors that are actually in the metadata broker, that there is no one of them. So we are going to update this connector C to the broker. And it has been correctly updated. And we are going to check if this new connector is included in the list of connectors of the metadata broker. And as we can see here, we have done the same call as this one, but now we have this in the list of connectors, we have the connector C included in the metadata broker. So here it's giving an identifier to this component, and we can see here that is the connector C included. So with these 5 test cases, we have checked the technical interoperability of this component in the IDS testbed, and we are going to follow with the testbed guide that is included in the repo, and we are going to set up a complete resource at data space connector A. So we are going to execute all these calls that I have explained before. First of all is creating an offer, creating a catalog, linking them, creating the rule, creating the contract, and then linking them, offering data to the data space connector, creating the representation, linking them, and then we are going to register connector A and B to the metadata broker so that it will appear in the list of connectors. And finally, we are going to check if it has been correctly registered at the metadata broker. So let's wait till this ends, and I will show you that they are correctly installed. Okay, so I'm going to check the list of connectors that are available at the metadata broker. And as we can see here, there are three of them. These are the data space connector B, data space connector C, and data space connector A. And here, if we go down, we can see the information that is the metadata information that are included in them. For the data space connector A, we can see that there is a resource catalog with the rule and the information that we can use. And I will show you next how to start a contract negotiation between data space connector B and data space connector A. So, just 1 second. First of all, I will request the self-description of data space connector A from data space connector B. I am going to obtain the corresponding rule, the usage policy I need to use, the offer that I want to search, and then I will start the negotiation.
Juuso, since we are almost over the time that we have, so I wanted to quickly ask how much more time do you think you would need?
If you give me a minute, I will end with the presentation.
Of course, yes, perfect.
Okay, so here we have created the contract, and the agreement has been created, and we can finally obtain the data. And here we have obtained all the data for this contract negotiation. And the last part I want to show you is how to request the broker a specific connector. We are going to obtain the metadata information of the broker, query the list of connectors, and we are going to search for data space connector A inside it. So if I go here and I search for the specific component, I am going to obtain the self-description of connector I. So now our component knows the data space connector A, and we can start negotiating with him directly. So to resume all this demo, we have showed how to install a new component in the testbed and the actual pre-configuration setup and the necessary steps in order to interoperate with the rest of components. We have also executed the Postman collection for the pre-configuration, resource setup, contract agreement, and metadata broker search. And of course, you can also introduce a different type of component, maybe a DApps or a metadata broker. And to do so, for example, for the DApps, you can add the certificates that are included in the IDS Testbed repository, add the client to the list, ensure that that are provided correctly. And for example, introducing a broker, you can try to install the testbed certificate, the reference the metadata broker you are inserting to the local DApps, ensure that the connector can register to your metadata broker. And well, with this, I end with the demo of the testbed, and I hope that this has been useful for all of you. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in this session. And finally, I just want to point out that if you have any issue at the IDS Testbed repository regarding installation or configuration, you can contact Aitor and I, open an issue there, or just send us an email and we will answer you as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Juuso. Thank you very much, Aitor. It was indeed very dense demonstration, because I know time was very short for such demonstration. You did great. So hopefully we will share the video with everyone, and if anyone could follow along or they faced problems, they can, as you mentioned, they can ask questions or they can raise issues on the GitHub project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next presenter would be, our next guest would be Jörg from Nikos, and it's wonderful to have you with us. And in the past, I didn't have the honor to meet you, but it's the first time, so it's great to have you here with us. And I will hand you the stage. So welcome.
Okay, hi. I want to show my slides. Am I able to?
Yes, you can share your screen. At the bottom, you see this screen sharing icon. You can share your screen.
No, I didn't see it.
It's close to the setting on the right side. It looks like a monitor.
Okay. I have to refresh. Okay. Let's say I think I'm the last in line here, and Juuso showed us a lot of stuff, and so I'm free of all those explanations Juuso made. Very nice, very, very nice. And I want to make a very short and brief introduction from the work we've done for the testbed and the testbed project for the last 1.5 years, and what it and maybe I want to show the way why we Nikos come to this point to work with the testbed. Okay, And as we see here on the screen, and Gaia box as an applicant, let's say the component under test, this was the main idea or the main point why we try to work with a testbed at Nikos, because we started with a testbed or testing ecosystem for IDS some years ago. But let's see what I've done so far. I think I don't want to jump to all those points because we've heard it yesterday, we've heard it today. Monica told us a lot of certification stuff and so on and so forth. And Josu shows us a very deep dive to the technical things. So I will jump to some points here to mention what we've done at Nikos so far. We have an own certification authority done. We've done our own dApps. We are familiar to work with the old maiden dApps too, not at least because of the question, is it possible to work with more than one dApps in one ecosystem? It's a very interesting question. And this leads or points to the fact that we at Nikos try to play around with a testbed, let's say play around with the ecosystem IDS, okay? And so we started 2 years ago with 1.5 years ago with a clearinghouse. It's a little bit aligned to the federation, the specification of Gaia X. It's a linked data notification service, but it's only inbox only so far because we don't know what the clearinghouse will be in the future for an IDS ecosystem. Metadata broker, I love it very well, and we take it as we see it here in the repo from our friends from Fraunhofer. Let's jump over Paris, and at last but not least, the connector to be tested itself. I say it's the Gaia box. I come to it in some minutes. So the testbed driven by Nikos is only for operational tests, not so. I think we don't want to make these pen testing stuff and so on and so forth like SIG does or SQS does. We are aligned to the certification criteria, so Monica showed us 2 hours ago, and we try to bring out protocols, but those protocols are informative and not normative, as Andreas Teuscher showed us 2 hours ago. So the normative protocols will come to the accredited certification body, blah, blah, blah. So real connector can be a connector up and running in a real productive ecosystem. But our protocols are aligned to the testing results done by the certification. So one of the things I love most is our testbed driven by a test suite. Is very automated. That's the reason why we don't work with the stuff here in the repository, the testbed repository, because we have this test suite, you say, or testbed now for 3 years, okay? And we try to work with it in future also, because we are not only, as you see on the right side here, aligned to the IDS, but also aligned to the decentralized identifier. We jumped the test suite of DIT, we jumped the test suite of verifiable credentials, and this leads to the point that we are able to equip the current Nikos dApp with verifiable credential stuff only for, let's say, play around with, you know? The LDP is the linked data platform. We jumped the LDP fence in testing. So the Gaia box is a linked data platform. I don't want to jump into detail. If there's someone who wants to know what it is, please contact me. What Nikos has done in the testbed project, only to show it here once again from top to bottom, we see the work from Monica and the certification working group. Then we see the testing facility like SIG or SQS. and also the questionnaire stuff and so on and so forth. Monica showed us 2 hours ago. And last but not least, the automated test I love most. And then the outcome of this testing facility might be any protocol going to the certification body. So at least the connector gets its certificate and is trusted to work in a living ecosystem. We've done this work of, let's say, machine-readable catalog regarding the fact that the criterions, the design specifications and the test case specifications are written down in a machine-readable way, and it's done by its own ontology. Look at the top left, IDS 3CO criteria for components, and we've done it. You can see it here on the next slide. We've done it with linked data here. You can see it in Turtle, but we can translate it to JSON-LD also. So all those information regarding the criteria, you can see it on the upper right, or the test design or test case specification on upper down right. We describe all these criteria and so on and so forth in a machine-readable way. One of the most impressive point is that this ontology is very strongly aligned to the IDS info model. Okay, so if we like to put it into the info model, we are able to do it. This is one of the reasons why we've started with here. You can see it in Turtle. We started in Turtle because the main portion of the info model, the IDS info model, is also expressed as an ontology in linked data Turtle. Okay, and one of the points I like most is that you can see it if you have a look at the second line here in above RDFS label. You can see on the right side this @en means this the value of this string is English. The whole catalog is up and running to be performed in any other language. Okay, we start here in English. I don't know if we want to put in another language than English. I don't know. I think IDSA has to decide. The question is why we came to this point. Here we have to read the old books. This is a cover of a publication of IDSA, October 2018. And it shows something here. My little friend Wally, some of us maybe remember what we've done there. It is an original screenshot from the Hannover Fair 2018, sorry. And we can see Lars Nagel wants me to show Wally, and this Wally is very impressive. It's a full-blown robot. We put in a lot of IoT stuff in, and on the left side you can see my iPad. On the left side of the screen of the iPad, you can see the remote control of Wally. What was happening there is the Wally as a connector subscribes data from a remote control, not from this application. And all this stuff was lying on Cisco appliances. So we, most of the people thought we made a local fake on Hannover Fair. No, it was a full-blown Cisco stuff we've done there. And this was the way to the Gaia box, let's say, the connector we want to express. I jump over all those things here, but at least the Gaia box is the base of Nikos dApps also. And at the end of the story, one of the things I like most, and then I will finish my little slides here. One of the things I like most is that the Gaia box is something like a linked data platform, but we are able to lift it to another, let's say, we are lifted to other functionality than LDP, so we can use it also as a policy information point, as Robin Brandstetter yesterday shows us regarding the fact of the usage control language and this policy enforcement stuff and policy decision stuff and the policy information point, blah, blah, blah. And so we bring up the Gaia box now to, that's the last slide here, up to, let's say, you can answer the question, is this point in time before this point in time or before this interval? You can ask questions like, is this point inside a geometry. Maybe more interesting is you can ask the question, is this agent, Yuzu, is he a member of organization, or is he a member of a group, admin group? Or at last, have a look at this, has membership, is ITOR a risk manager? One of the famous questions in the usage control language, the thingy of risk manager. What is the role risk manager? And last but not least, maybe we are able to answer the question, is weather nice? Is this weather here nice? Or is it stormy? As we know here, it's very stormy in Germany. I like this most, and I only want to show you what we are trying to do with GaiaBox as a let's say an IDS connector. It's also able to behave like a usage control pip or access control pip or whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was indeed very impressive. And please, if there's any link to be shared, feel free to share it in the chat. So I would like to thank you, Yoso, Aitor, and Jörg. Thank you very much for this great session. And I will hand over to Sonia because we are already over the scheduled time.
Yes, thank you, Ayran. I think we're a little bit over time, but I'd like to thank the speakers for this session, and I'd like to remind you, now it's a call to action, you can contribute to both the certification and the IDS Reference Testbed, so you can join the working group certification. You will be able to join soon the sub-working group testbeds, and in the meantime, you can already contribute to the further development and the improvement of the IDS Reference Testbed by reviewing the documentation, implementing the testbed, and creating your pull request.
Is it only me, or we lost Sonia's connection?
We lost her.
Okay, so as she was mentioning, everyone feel free to join our GitHub and to contribute to this project, amazing project testbed. So I will thank you, everyone, and it will be lunch break, I think. So we will see everyone hopefully after the lunch break. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.